thank you again for spending the afternoon with us and sharing this film. You've been rolling this out since Cannes, and people have been talking about this being the year of the horror film in a lot of ways, from Sinners. In a way, this for me is the scariest film of the year. So yes, congratulations in that sense. But maybe let's just set the groundwork for this remarkable film. And Alex, maybe you could take the lead, or Raoul, talk about the collaboration with the Orwell estate to get access to this incredible material.
Sure. Well, I got a call from a lovely man named Johnny Fewings, who had made a deal with the Orwell estate and was looking to do something about Orwell that could include all of his collected works. And he asked me, if I would help him find the right director to do it. And for me, there was only one person. That was Raoul, and that was Raoul for all sorts of reasons. One, he's an extraordinary director. Two, he's lived under authoritarian or totalitarian regimes, and he's a citizen of the world. And for all those reasons, I felt it was terribly important. There was only one issue for me. Would he say yes?
He got you to yes, Raoul.
Well, that was not a very difficult call. Of course, for me, Orwell meant, of course, something totally different from everything I've done before. I never thought that, or let's say, the way I learned about Orwell in school, it was basically this sort of science fiction writer, dystopian writer about the world that is to come. And I was living a life of reality. I was confronted with very heavy, real problems throughout the places I lived, whether Haiti, Congo, or even France and Germany. So, but the name was strong enough. The adjective Orwellian was strong enough to know that with Alex and my team that we could surely do a great film. But what I did not anticipate is that the film would be such an organic film, within my own life and work, and even an intimate film, because I recognize in Orwell somebody that was hidden from me for all those years. The fact that he was not writing about the future, he was writing about what he personally went through, about the risk he took in his life, about what he learned from reaching out to the other, to go in another land and to discover actually that he was the tool of colonialism, and came to write about it in a very sincere and direct way. So all this, I didn't expect it, and made me able to do the film that you saw tonight.
So one of the remarkable things that I think you've accomplished is you turned the development of 1984, the novel, into a thriller, right? You take us on this ride. I'm wondering how you decided on that structure. There's a number of ways you could have approached it, traditional kind of biographical thing, but you really build up the tension.
Well, because I do documentary and fiction, and I basically have a similar approach, so I knew that I didn't want to make a sort of biography of Orwell. I had to make sure, first of all, I knew, and we had decided it was going to be a theatrical film. That means we have to tell a story with an important character who's Orwell. And when you write a screenplay, what you try to do is to find a moment in the life of that character where there is an important decision, there is a struggle, there are conflicting emotion, and very early on I knew it was the last year of his life when he's trying to write his masterpiece of 1984, and he's struggling to try to finish it. And he's going in and out of hospitals and sanatorium. and not only, you know, and with the magic of cinema, I knew that it was a sort of thriller situation of not knowing the ending of it, even though we know, of course, that the novel exists. So it allows me to have this very simple storyline, where then from there I could revisit his whole body of work, and to have that extraordinary trove of material and richness. I knew that, you know, I could add all the layers that I need for the story.
Alex, you've examined the perils of unchecked power throughout your career, whether Taxi to the Dark Side or the Enron documentary. As we learned, Orwell had this kind of universal point of view on the perils of power, right? That it could come from many directions. I was just wondering, for you in your own work, including this film, but has Orwell's writing or himself, his example guided you in any way?
I think so. I think in a couple of ways. I mean, first of all, Orwell came to develop an aesthetic that was very important. His writing is very forceful, but very simple in terms of the language he uses. And so it's meant to communicate with as many people as possible. And I think the other thing that's important about Orwell, and the reason he stands the test of time and is an inspiration to many people, is because his frame was to look for human patterns. He's universalist in his thinking. And he's not going to, just because someone's on his side, he's not going to avoid the uncomfortable truths that may come from seeing an abuse of power. So it was that kind of rigor and simplicity that I've always admired about Orwell.
The contemporary parallels are many, but I thought we could maybe focus on the manipulation of language, or this concept of newspeak out of the novel. It feels frighteningly real these days. Each of you maybe just address that subject within the contemporary realm.
In fact, this is something I discovered very early on in my life. I come from Haiti. I come from a time of dictatorship, the Duvalier regimes, both father and son. I remember leaving Haiti as a young boy, going with my parents to Congo, where we will encounter another type of dictatorship. But during all that time frame, I grew up understanding that there are two meanings of democracy, of justice. There was one for in the United States, where most presidents, from Kennedy, Ford, Nixon, were always talking, when they were talking about the third world, about bringing democracy, bringing justice, bringing equality, whatever the word were. And at the same time, they were supporting dictatorship in our countries. At the same time, they were supporting the wrong people. So I knew there is a problem with these words. There is and I grew up deconstructing the meanings of language. I knew that there were different types of language. You could manipulate language. And so rediscovering Orwell, I really felt at home. So I knew those segments that they had to be part of the film.
And Alex, as producer in this case, did you have concerns about, the environment in which this kind of call out for the contemporary moment was going to land, right?
My only concern was that people wouldn't feel the heat, but I think they do. I hope you did. There was a sense of urgency when we started this film, and that was before Trump was elected. So there was already a sense that we were drifting into a kind of global authoritarianism, and so it was my hope from the get-go that, and that's something I think Raoul handles very well in the film. Is not only does he jump from country to country, but also from present to past and back to present again, where you see the patterns, and they both they just lend a kind of a rigor to this moment. So it's not like, oh, oh my God, what just happened is so new. It's not new. We've been here before. And we've gotten out before, but it's not guaranteed. So it allows for a sense of engagement, while it also reminds us that we're not living in an unprecedented time, which I think is an important reservoir of strength.
And I would add as well, when at one point I think we had the discussion about, we basically hoped or thought that Kamala Harris would become president. But for me, the film was as urgent to make as if it was Donald Trump. And because those patterns are not, doesn't emerge like suddenly. I've felt that we have seen that, how do you call it, that glitch, or that, slow coming to drift. I felt it in Europe. I remember when Berlusconi became prime minister in Italy, people were making fun of it, but a lot of my friends from the third world did not think it was funny, because we had seen that in our countries. Ugly figure like Idi Amin or others, Mobutu. People made fun of Mobutu, but he was still killing people. So that was not funny. And we saw this coming as well in Europe, where and we had President and Prime Minister like Bill Clinton, Tony Blair, trying to ease the changing of times, push us to accept the statu quo as being normal, the rise of money. I remember the 80s and 90s, we got accustomed to a lot of things that were already deviant to me. Deviant in the sense of they were already not totally real democracy. And we got lazy on that. We accepted again and again things that we should have rebelled against.
It's interesting. You're reminding me in 2015 or whatever it was, that certain news outlets, I think it was Huffington Post in particular, would only cover Trump in the entertainment section, right? They wouldn't cover him in the politics section because it's a joke. And now, full circle, I read an article yesterday about Matt Parker and Trey Stone, or maybe have the back, the South Park guys, saying politics is entertainment. It always has been, but clearly that's what it is now. So it's almost come full circle. There's a quote you include in the film from Orwell. It's from 1946. The opinion that art should have nothing to do with politics is itself a political attitude. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about that.
Well, first of all, it's totally true, and this is something I always try to do once I decided to make films. Films were for me a sort of political engagement. It was never the concept of art. I'm saying that here, of art for for art itself was never sufficient. To be an artist is a sort of privilege that you have, that society allows you to be in, and as a return, you have to give back something to your society, and specifically because you're supposed to feel a bit earlier than the normal citizen what's going on, and you're supposed to warn, you're supposed to show, of course, beauty, as always say, beauty is part of it as well, but also responsibility, also sensitivity. So all this for me was never a contradiction with, I would say, politics. I remember growing up, it was always you have to choose. You're doing art or politics. You couldn't mix them. And I was very happy to discover that for Orwell as well. All his life he tried to mix art with politics because there was not such a separation. And on the contrary, he said not having to take a stand or not choosing or trying to be neutral is a political position. In that term, I totally join him in that. Yeah.
Alex, what are your thoughts on that as someone who's engaged throughout his work in the political as well?
I'm very much on the same page as Raoul. sometimes the word political can be misused in the sense that it can come to mean a kind of particular, almost sort of tribal mechanism. And there's a quote from the film where Orwell says, I'm not going to get the quote right, but essentially that my hope lies just before that. He says, my hope lies in the sense of moral reckoning that common people have. In other words, there's a sense of common decency. There's a sense, a fundamental sense of what's right and what's wrong. And if you appeal to that and believe in it, you can get to some place beyond what I would call petty politics, and that it's a moral inquiry that we're really talking about, not about left or right, but right and wrong.
So, we are well aware here that art can exist for its own sake. We try to avoid elevating art for art's sake. But art can also, in its probably best sense in some cases, offer hope, right? Or point a way towards hope or foster hope. Coming out of this project, I mean, I feel like you end the film on a note of hope, and many of us, I think, in the past week or so are starting to feel tingles of what hope feels like. Do you feel hope coming out of this project?
Okay, before I answer that, I would say art is also a sort of reconcile us with being human, being giving us something to look for as a human being. In that sense, it's also political, and it's important in the life of a society. Regarding hope, we had again that discussion an hour ago, because we're not totally, it's what we understand under the term hope, but I'll let you say your part. But hope is something, I try not to use the same way people sometimes ask you, are you pessimist or an optimist? I feel that it's almost a privilege way to be able to think like that, because most people on this planet, they don't have that choice. They have to act, they have to face reality, they have to respond to urgency. They are never, almost rarely, in a sort of reflective way of thinking, what am I going to do tomorrow? Is there hope of some sort? And Orwell himself, at the end, the end of the novel 1984 can be very pessimistic, And when he voiced that, he said, if there is hope, so that means there is a response we have to give to it. If there is hope, it won't happen by itself. It's the response that each one of us, individually or collectively, decide to give to that. But there is no ready-made response. There is nothing, the future will be whatever we do or not do, but it will happen some way. So we better try to impact it, or we better try to be part of it.
Otherwise, it's just a slogan.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, this is a friendly argument that Raoul and I have over and over again about what is the word hope mean. In a way, I would say I don't think that hope is something passive. I think hope is a sense of possibility. It's sort of like that, what's that Leonard Cohen line? There's a crack in everything, that's how the light gets in. Hope for me are the cracks in the bleakness. And you look to them because that gives you a place to go, gives you a way forward. And there is a way forward, but it's going to take work, hard work. And so in that sense, hope is not a pathway to passivity, but a spurred action.
Let's say hope as fuel.
As fuel, yes. We can agree on that.
Well, thank you for fueling our fire, Alex Gibney.